Hey everybody, it's Steve. Just give me 1 second to close my door here. Okay, so all right. Love how I come in and go out on this. My wife might walk in during training because there is something I have to sign for a bank, but we'll see. Hey Lenny, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
All right, all right. And Ryan should be here in a minute. So what I wanted to cover today. Well, first of all, do you have any questions or anything on your development or transition or whatever?
No, I just waiting. They said that they would send you an email to confirm my application. So whenever that comes through, I should be good to go.
Let me just check. We're talking about the board, right? So let me just search for, because I've had some family stuff going on, so I've been a little bit not as attentive to this as I should have been normally. And I've had 3 closings went sideways. Now, do you want client referrals, or are you not ready for that? I'm talking about buyers.
Yeah, I would say not ready for that.
Okay.
I definitely have, once this is all smooth and figured out, a handful of listings that I want to focus on, and obviously, since I'm just getting started, want to put my focus on them.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. View sign. Okay. So they did just. I just got it. Actually, came in yesterday. I just didn't see it. So I will review, sign, and date the stuff here. Let me just download it. I'll get it back to them. Thankfully, we know that because I just, between a couple closings going sideways and something going on with my daughter, I just honestly forgot to look.
No,
Anyway,
I understand.
all right. So what I wanted to cover today, by the way, this is recording starting now. But what I wanted to cover today is, which you may not, I mean, is there any topic you want me to start with? Because I was going to start with how to get listings through expireds and how to look at that. But if there's a different place that fits you more, I can start there, because I've already done some things with Ryan, but I want to make sure you start. Or do you just want me to start off fresh as if whatever?
Yeah, I'll follow along with whatever you were gonna, do today. My questions. You pretty much answered when I came into the office there and prior. So
All right, cool. Yeah, obviously you can send me those whenever. So a couple things just to cover, and I know you've been through whatever number of closings with Max's World. That so I know some of this is old hat, but I feel like every closing has its bumps. Some closings feel like an airplane sliding sideways up to the jetway with no wheels. And so a couple things that have happened today. I had a closing in Shamokin, which is always fun having a remote closing where you've never actually been to the property. Oh, this is a wholesale side.
hmm.
And seller had said, "Oh yeah, we're ready." Buyer got there and they hadn't even begun to move out yet. And
Wow.
um, with buyer was actually, he's like, "Look," he's like, "if you tell me whatever, I'll just take it as it sits." There's always those last minute things to deal with, and if you can't reach the parties in question, it reach out to me and then we'll decide what pressure. Like, I actually, on this deal authorized, I called a handyman. I'm like, because there was a certain door that was locked for accessing the basement,
Hmm.
and I was about to call a handyman and say kick the door in. I don't care. Which is definitely pushing the line of what a pre-sales can do.
Hmm.
The buyer had flown in from 2 hours away, so like, and then we're supposed to close tomorrow, so whatever. Another one I have where it's a liquor license, bar, or whatever transfer, and on buyer side there's another seller side, and attorneys suck, basically. This attorney, who's my client's attorney, doesn't like realtors. He's kind of okay with me, I guess, but and it's a matter of, where's the HUD statement? I gave it to the other attorney. Great, John, but I need it, and so does the other agent, because it's our responsibility to go over it with our client. And John's like,
Hmm.
well, the attorney should do that. I said, well, my license still says that I need to have, and I don't know if it's license says, but my responsibility is to make sure my client understands what they're signing. I can't just hope their attorney did it.
Right.
Where the law jams us up on that is that the buyer is supposed to be able to have the HUD 24 hours before closing. The seller isn't. There's no requirement. The seller can see it the moment you walk in the closing room. So anytime I don't have a HUD 24 hours before or more, then I start getting just as upset as the seller agent's going to get it. And the attorney's like, well, he's just trying to go on vacation. I said, John, I'm not going to get into his personal life. Maybe he is just trying to go on vacation, but he's trying to make sure he does his thing. So a lot of what our job, and this is one of the reasons we have someone available, or again, bringing someone on board. We don't have her on board yet for transaction coordinating, whether you want to use it or not. But there's a lot of that little last minute stuff. And the transition for you between the wholesale world and coming into the broker world is, and when brokering becomes licensed, or rather when wholesaling becomes licensed, it'll kind of become the same, because even though it won't be a listing agreement, it'll still be under RELRA. I just need to lift my computer up because it's on a soft surface and I don't want it to overheat. I had a lock issue with, or I forgot my keys at the office, so I had to work from home. Anyway, so basically, it becomes our job to make sure all parties are on the same page. Now, the first thing I want to cover before we get into the conversation about expired listings and how to get leads from that, and this is something between our database of the Scranton board, which covers a fair amount of counties around us, between the database I have access to with Bright, which is basically roughly Allentown down to Northern Virginia, and through Ryan's access through his brokerage up in New York. He's licensed in the whole state, but he has MLS access. It's like Binghamton, Rochester, I think Albany on down. Not Manhattan, but like it's that sort of what they call the southern tier of New York. We can generate a good chunk of off market, or rather of expired listings, whichever way they go. Whether expireds convert backwards into wholesales is an open question. Because if they were considering full market price, are they willing to take a sacrifice? I don't know. But the one thing you know about the expireds is they wanted to sell before. What we want to always make sure. Sorry, any questions about that?
Nope.
What we always want to make sure is that we have. Oh, here's Ryan. Hey, Ryan, you're just joining in progress here. So,
hey guys.
How you doing?
Hey,
Ryan, Lenny.
Hi, Lenny.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right. So, and actually, we got Robin and Eric who aren't going to make it, but they're coming on board as well. So we're slowly growing the team. I'll send everybody the link. We just kind of covered expired listings, and we covered some things of what can go wrong in a brokerage thing. And Lenny's coming from working with Max, so like the wholesale and the closing thing is something he knows quite well, and he was at a title company before, so there's a lot of that. But what I was saying was that with expireds, one thing we know is that they wanted at some point to sell, and they wanted to sell at a retail value. That's why they were with a realtor. What makes it sweet is we'll say their realtor screwed up. That isn't fair. The deal didn't move. It didn't close. So for whatever reason, that's where they're at. And the conversation is, do you want to sell now? Before I got there, I just want to look at documents and talk about what we store in paperless pipeline. Next week, I'll cover paperless pipeline in depth because it's its own little world. But the short version is anything that is signed by us and any of our parties. And that includes a consumer notice that you send out and don't get back. If you send out a consumer notice to a client, never comes back signed, you need to still file that. And what you do is you send the signed by you consumer notice with its date, and you PDF a copy of the sending, whether it's coming by email or DocuSign or carrier pigeon, and you send both of those documents to and GPGH Realty. I will make a gorilla one of these shortly, but GPGH Realty, good people, good homes is what it's short for. GPGH Realty at gmail.com. Anything sent to that ends up in what I call the giant closet at Paperless Pipeline, which is unfiled documents. At the very least, and put in the subject line your name, address, and whichever your client name is. Then, if it doesn't get filed properly, which will be next week's lesson, at least it's in Paperless Pipeline. So everything that has a client signature on it goes there. Any email or communication, even if it's a screenshot of something, screenshot of a text message, for example, anything that looks like it may be needed to clarify an argument later, send it over there. At the very least, it's all sitting in the bucket. And, we should file it. I'll teach you how to file it. But at the very least, we can say to the state, we've established that we possess it. If the inspector ever shows up, we're going to have to organize it and find it and make it make sense if it's still in the giant vault. But, the law says we must keep these documents. And so we want to make sure that they get there. And that includes, and I'm having actually the closing that happened on Friday, Ryan, with Oritz property. They just sent me the signed HUD because neither one of us went to closing. Nobody went to closing, truthfully. Everybody did it remotely. And so title has to send us over, PDFs of everything, and we have to get them into Realty. So that's the easy way. And yes, you can keep copies of it, whatever, fine. But that way, if there's some point down the road, we need to say, where is this? Ideally, it's been properly filed in Paperless Pipeline. But at least it's there. So that if the state ever shows up, and that saved my tail on at least one transaction where there is a lawsuit, and there is E&O policy involved. And 3 lawyers have told me I did nothing wrong, including the lawyer suing me. But at the same time, had to provide my documents, had to yada yada. So all of a sudden, I had to create a link that everyone could share of all the documents. And that also includes anything that backs up. And so this particular deal, I'll explain this one, is we sold it as a double. And apparently had a survey been done, which a neighbor did a survey, and that's how this was discovered. It wasn't a double. Now, here's what's interesting. County of Lackawanna had it in their records as a 2-family dwelling. That was April of 20... No, that was like August of 22, something like that. Maybe November. Come May of 23, or maybe it was 24, I think it was 23, the County of Lackawanna had it registered as a vacant property. So when my E&O policy people did their research, and they come up and said, wait, you told me this. No, it had been sold 5 times before as a double. Pictures as a double. Seller told me it was a double. Everyone told me it was a double. But what really saved my butt, although I don't think I would have been on the hook anyway because it had been sold so many times before, was I said, well, the County of Lackawanna's website said it was a double. Well, no, they say it's a vacant home. I said, well, here's the PDF where they said it was a double. I pulled. So you always pull the tax records and you PDF them and you stick them in the Paperless Pipeline file. And as soon as E&O saw that, they said, well, we're going to have to go through the motions here, but there is no liability on your behalf because you could not have known this. Now, because of that transaction, I now have, and I'm getting more consistent about this, but I'm going to insist you guys do it, and I'm going to insist I do it too. If anyone's going to screw up, it should be me. We have a little, and this was not a legal document. This was written by ChatGPT that basically says, if you don't do a survey, then not our fault. If you don't check with the municipality for verifying information we provided, not our fault. If you don't check with the sewer authority and for various things, not our fault. So while are we absolving ourselves? I don't know. But at least we're saying to the client, hey, you're signing this, and here's a checklist of things you should look into yourself to be sure. We don't know everything. We don't know every community. maybe we hear something wrong from the municipality, maybe they say something wrong. Like it says on the MLS listing, information is assumed accurate but not guaranteed. And the funny thing on this particular E&O is, which is the only E&O I've ever had in my life, E&O is errors and omissions, is that Ryan and I sued a seller who boned us on a deal. And that judge, that magistrate, happens to be the prosecuting, or whatever it is, the filing attorney for the person making the complaint against me. And so we're going through the case. We're almost done with the case. And he's like, he didn't pick up on my name, but I mentioned the abstract company. He's like, Bilbo. Franco, Bilbo. Oh, crap, I can't hear this case. We have to, whatever, recuse himself. Because all he knew sitting at the bench was his law firm was involved with something that had the names Franco and Bilbo connected. So it was kind of like how small this market is. So everything signed by your client and or you, or that offered by you to your client, goes in paperless pipeline. Anything else that looks critical or could be critical, all of your due diligence, if you scan the deed, anything, I don't mean like every single email or anything silly like that, but a reasonable line, and he's been in title and wholesaling long enough, make sure we have enough to cover ourselves. And on this Scranton transaction, and I'm actually going to share one of my screens now just as an illustration of this, because the Scranton transaction is a weird one, the E&O deal. And zip forms, there it is. There it is, share that one. All right, so a couple things is basically I was going to show various documents, but pretty much any document we're going to save. But if this were the road, the search bar were the road, my house is here. That's an empty lot, and so you would imagine that the lot lines go Hyde Park backwards. Like, I have never until this deal met a deal where that wasn't true. Your address is Hyde Park. The narrow length almost always is along the road, Hyde Park backwards. Well, for whatever reason, in this transaction, this is the parcel. Like, the address is still Hyde Park, which is over here. This is, I don't know, Apple Street or something. And the Hyde Park deeds go backwards from Apple. So my client thought he bought and sold, because I was dual agent. And this is where dual agent can be fun. They thought they bought and sold this. I even did a private loan. So they got $30,000 of my money that I'll probably never see again. Because this is what we thought we were doing. And this is a guy I had done a bunch of deals with before. But this is what the guy next door bought at tax sale. And my client's deed somehow is this back here below, underneath. And of course, the house is up here by the street. There's no way we could have known. Title company says, and I know Betty well enough to know that she probably did. She said, and she does on almost every closing. She pulls out the map and says, "Here's what you're buying," and shows you the map and pulls out a highlighter and does this little dog and pony show. And she says they agree to it. I said, well, I believe you did because I've never seen you not do it, but I have no memory of it, and I'll tell you point blank. I said, and this, I don't think it's Title's fault either, because Title is not a survey. But if you'd said that and I was a beginner, I might not pick up on it. So then that's why when I wrote this had ChatGPT write this thing that says, if you don't pull a survey, it's not my fault. We're giving you what we think. It's it's you, Mr. Buyer's job. And it's our job to tell them, hey, you should think about having a survey done. But I look at a property and I'm like, oh, I see where the lawns are mowed. I see where the fences are. Okay, I pretty much get it. Within a couple feet, I know what it is. So anyway, so that's what we want to capture as agents. And I know that, Ryan, you've been, we've done a few deals together. Ryan's been my agent since 22, I think, 23. And we've been wholesaling together for a couple more years. But, Lenny, as a newly licensed or whatever, If it looks like a document that's going to have any future importance, we keep it.
Okay.
And if you're doing so dual agency, and then I'll get to what I meant to talk about today. Dual agency means that you or us are in both sides of it, meaning whether Lenny is buyer's agent, Ryan is seller's agent, or vice versa, or one of you is both agents. First of all, both parties have to sign off. There's a document, and again, this is on the offer agreement. Actually, it's on the agreement of sale. We'll cover that in the future thing as well. But it's also, I have another piece of paper. I'm kind of going EXP now with my paper, where I have a thing for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, EXP is not apparently well liked by the attorneys or by the state, but it's a different story. Apparently, their system looked amazingly, shockingly organized to me, but apparently on the other side, they're good. I have a document where both parties sign off and say, hey, we're going to represent both sides. Either Lenny is one side, Ryan is the other, but Gorilla is both, or one of you is both, and I'm also both. Boom. We make it real blank. If you personally are both, once that second party signs on, obviously, usually you have the listing first and then the buyer, whatever.
Mm.
Once that party signs on, you then owe equal levels of confidentiality and all the other stuff to both. And I'm just going to remind you guys, like when they sign a consumer notice, they're not a client. They're okay. So there's public, customer, and client. Public and customer are very similar. Public is they haven't done squat with you. You still owe them honesty, integrity, truthfulness, and all that basic crap. They sign a consumer notice. You owe them a little bit more, but you're still down to that honesty, integrity, basic crap. And you tell them, do not tell me, and that's what the consumer notice also says, but I say it to them bluntly. Until you sign a listing agreement or a buyer agency agreement with me, I don't want to know your secrets. I don't want to know how badly you need the property. I don't want to know your secrets until we have a level of confidentiality. And if I'm a listing agent and a buyer calls me, I immediately say, don't tell me anything, because whatever you tell me belongs to the seller until we sign that buyer agency agreement.
Right.
Now, would I ever rat an unsigned person out to the seller? No. But if the unsigned person told me something and the seller and I are discussing it, is it going to color what I tell the seller? Yeah, it probably will. So you make it sure to them, listen, consumer notice does, and you have, preferably by something written like text message, I don't belong to you. Don't tell me your secrets. Well, if you tell me your secrets, I'm not required to keep them secret. Because I had a buyer and I went through all this with him.
Mm.
And then 5 minutes later, he said, well, listen, I have this many dollars and I have to sign a contract on something by the end of today. And this is the only house I have time to see. And I said, well, you just did everything I didn't tell you. I told you not to. But now that I know it, I guess we're signing an offer agreement because you pretty much told me you've got no other choice. Like something bad's going to happen to you if you don't do this. Mm. So once they sign an agreement, then you're dual and you owe them both everything, like confidentiality, fiduciary duty, best advice. And that's the part where many agents and people don't like dual, because there's a limit to what you can do in best advice. I have one right now. Seller wants, this is McCarriger, right? I know what seller wants. I know exactly where seller's squeal point is. I don't try to know that because I don't want to tip anything off, but I know exactly where he squeaks. Hang on one second. Just find out why the phone's vibrating. I know exactly where seller squeaks. And buyer said, what's the best seller can do? And as dual, I am limited because all I can say is what the seller has publicly allowed me to say, what he's allowed me to post on the MLS. And the buyer's like, you don't think he'll do any better? I said, all I can do is present what you want to do. And it gets sticky because the buyer said, well, what do you think I should offer? And that's when we start thinking designating. That's when, Lenny might think about taking that buyer, or Ryan might think about taking that buyer and shoving it over to somebody else, or shoving one of the parties over. Mm. So I remain dual. but you guys have a single responsibility? Because my answer at that point was, well, tell me your math again. I've shown you how I do math because that's what I do with all my buyers. Tell me your math. Oh, my math is your math. I said, okay. Well, here's my formula. You've told me your math is my math. Here's what HUD will pay for rentals. I use the HUD statement because it's a publicly available flat number. Probably can get you more, yada yada. And I say, this is what the spreadsheet. Said, yeah, but what do you think I should do? I said, this is where I have to stop you. And I tell them point blank, I have to stop my advice. I said, we have a buyer agency agreement, and this is why the buyer agency agreement names the property. Because he's like, well, I'll just go find another agent. I said, well, here's the problem. We have a buyer agency agreement. I've shown you the property. So I said, you can go to another agent, but that other agent won't get paid because I'm the procuring cause of the sale.
Right.
So I said, I can designate you over, or you can tell me where you want to be. Actually, it wasn't McCarrick. It was one up there in Abington. But anyway, so I said, that's where I have to stop. Now, if we are dual, if any of us are dual, Gorilla or any of us, and who takes this out, I normally, and I won't say I do it. I don't say we have to do it every time, but normally I say we're better off providing a cheap $300 home warranty on the property than not, because we're dual. We're collecting a little bit extra being on both sides, because then. And we still make them do their inspections. We still make them do their yada yada, but to avoid issues, we say, listen, we provide $300 toward a home warranty. Do you want one or not? But basically, if we're dual or you're dual, if we're dual, it's not as big a deal. If Gorilla is dual, because the likelihood of you guys coming to me with super confidentiality questions is slim, and if you do, that's fine. I can hear them both, and I can decide, where the line is. But usually, that's not an issue. Ryan,
I have a question there.
Yeah.
So then, say the communication between me and Ryan, that obviously stays, as we're liable to stay confidential. We shouldn't and wouldn't have any conversation on the deal.
Okay, so yeah, so just to restate what I think you're saying. So if you're one agent and he's the other agent, whichever the names go, seller buyer, you guys are going back and forth as if you're adversaries. Not not nastily.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
As if you're opposite sides, and you're trading what you would with the opposite side, whether the opposite side is inside a Gorilla or outside a Gorilla. You're sharing, as much as you need to. Obviously, you may not need to call your broker with every single thing. I don't need to know the play-by-play unless the game is going south and I need to step in. Or we have or you have a question. Obviously, you have a question. Obviously, I'm first. I'm first call for every question. But so you and Ryan are going back and forth and publicly available, and where it's unusual for the broker to have a problem in designated situations is if you're giving your best advice to your client and Ryan's giving best advice to his client, the chances of me having to break a tie between two agents having best advice is pretty slim. I'm not going to come in and say, Ryan, you need to force your seller to do this. Now, if you guys are going back and forth and there's a stalemate, or for whatever, again, always for whatever reason you think you need me, call me. But if there's a stalemate, and then please do come to me and say, listen, either as together or separately, come to me and say, hey, Steve, my client's drawing a line here, Ryan's client's drawing a line here. This is the struggle. What's our best? Is there a best rather than saying we're just done here?
Right.
And those are usually, sometimes they're overpriced. They're usually over inspection contingencies. That's usually where it falls down. A lot of times it falls down over my client. Well, McCarrick is a great example. I have a guy who's stepped back from making an offer, even though I pretty much opened the map for him. He's like, well, there's asbestos there, and I don't want to deal with asbestos. I said, well, you're making a finished offer as it's done. And this was a third-party buyer. It was me and a third party. But going back and forth, that's where it falls apart. The buyer wants this done, seller doesn't. And that's where a lot of times when I was with Berkshire, I don't think it happened when I was at EXP, but when I was with Berkshire, I called Bob. I'm like, I'm on both sides of this equation. These two guys are tripping over this thing. Am I designating this, or do you have advice? And 9 times out of 10, Bob was like, well, you don't need to designate this one out. We can solve this by doing this. And we came up with something that was at least reasonable. Whether the clients accepted it or not, different story. And I had another deal, actually 2 other deals, where I was dual. And the parties got to in one case, the 2 parties got to a stupid distance apart. It was a $2-point-something million deal. And they were $3,000 apart. And neither one was budging. They had both reached their end of the line, and they were both ready to walk. So I did, and always check with your broker before this, not because the broker is going to care about, percentage change, but always backstop. Because when I did this, and Bob found out later what I did, I literally discounted my commission $3,000. I'm like, I don't care if Bob takes the same amount, and it was make X $1,000 or make nothing. And I did it. And Bob yelled at me later, and he was absolutely right, because this client did exactly what he said. He's great. Next time you deal with that client, they're going to jerk you again. He's like, I know you want the 20 grand or 40 grand. It was a lot of money. I mean, especially for me at the time, it was a lot of money. He's like, but now you've set an expectation with that seller. And they did the exact same thing. I had another deal with them, and I was dual, so I was getting both sides. And I presented the final offer after 300 hours of negotiating. Here's the offer, no contingencies, cash, whatever. And they said, great. My commission at the time was 5 if it was 2 agents, 4 if it was just me. And they said, okay, but we're not signing at 4, we're signing at 3. You can drop to 3%, or we're keeping this property and the deals are over. So I took the 3% because it was make something or make nothing. And still, it's 3% of $2.2 million. So it was still a good number. But I lost 25% because I had made it clear. And every deal after that, and I told them to go get wet every single time they tried it after that. It was a $150,000 deal, and it was a 4% commission. And he's like, I'll sign it if it's 3. I said, then don't sign it. I said, no, I'm not playing this again. I said, and also 1%. I said, $150,000 deal is not worth us negotiating over. I said that those pennies don't matter to you; they don't matter to me. So that's where in a dual situation, not to go too deep in it, but that's where in a dual situation where the broker can provide some guidance. Now. Sometimes commission give ups. Okay, we can decide that on a case by case, but that's where I don't have a problem being dual and you guys are designated, because there's very little. I'm not dealing directly with either of your clients. I owe both clients full confidentiality. I owe both, so I could never tell Ryan something that was told to Lenny by the seller or vice versa.
Right.
I could never break that tree, but because I know both sides of the tree, maybe I can come up with something to plod it along. Or the other thing, and I think I told you Lenny, I think Ryan, you and I knew each other. I ended up with 2 agreements of sale on one property because I thought one had expired when the party didn't come to a meeting of the minds after inspection, and that does not end a contract. You have to terminate for that,
right.
And only the buyer can terminate for that. So if you get a situation where there's a logjam and it's not happening, I have to get involved to guide us to a point where they're either going to accept it and move on and do the deal, or they're going to all sign to terminate. So basically, that's why if it gets sticky, like on my own sale of one of my own rental properties, I was dual. And I probably would never advise doing this again, because not only was I dual, but I was also the seller.
Right.
Triple is kind of a lot. I didn't really think about it at the time. But after that, I just, that was when I came up with the rule that if it gets sticky, I'm going to designate. Now, it turns out this deal didn't get sticky because as the seller, I pretty much agreed to whatever the hell the buyer wanted. I expected to get $130 for the property. They were offering me $160. So when they asked for $5,000 off for repairs, I was like, yes, I'm still way over. I still win.
Yeah.
But that was the one where I decided, I told Bob, I said, if it gets sticky, I need somebody else to take the other half. because I'm on too many sides of this thing.
Right.
So I kind of went off there, but basically, that's where you guys, if you're dual, you can't. Well, here's the repair list, here's the inspection report. What do you think I should do? The answer to that is, maybe a little more, but your answer is decide what matters to you and or send a contractor in to price all the repairs and decide what matters to you. Now, I will, even when I'm dual, I will look through the inspection report because I should, because it's whatever. And I will say, listen, typically these items are mentioned but not important, and these items are important, more critical than this. There's a roof issue. Well, that's going to be a crap load more expensive than a missing GFI in the kitchen. So I can give that kind of advice. The other thing to remember, and when you're dual, this is why they agree that they know you're dual, and whether you can go through all of this. You tell them I've worked for both parties and my confidentiality is owed to both parties, but whatever. You don't take them through every intricacy, but there's the assumed foreknowledge. It's assumed that whatever the agent knows has been told to the client. So the moment you know it as the agent, whether you're dual or not, the moment you as the agent, as the seller's agent, see the inspection report, forward it to your client, because the moment you touch it, it's assumed your client knows it.
Okay.
So, and when you're dual, everything's forwarded to you, so therefore you can't not know it. Both sides now are assumed to know it. And where that didn't get me into trouble, but where I had a seller who told me, if there's an inspection report, I don't want to see it because I don't want to know the disclosable facts. And I represented the buyer also. And before they did their inspection, I said, Mr. Seller, if these folks do an inspection, you're going to get the inspection report. You're going to know it. Because if I know it, you know it. Now, if you guys were designated agents, Ryan's client did the inspection, Lenny still doesn't have to receive the inspection. His client doesn't want to know. So his client has to sign that they don't want to know. We have to get a document of that. But that's okay. Ryan can keep the inspection report to himself and deal with his client and just ask Lenny for certain requests. And as long as Lenny's client doesn't want the inspection report, whatever, I don't need to ever, almost ever see it. But if you're on both sides, once the buyer gives the buyer's agent the inspection report, it's assumed the seller knows it. Most sellers don't ask to not know, but if your seller has, it's out there. So when you do get into duals or when you do have a client and you're on both sides, or we're on both sides, we're all going to have a conversation and reminder about what that is. But
and why would a seller not want to see the inspection report?
Because if you go to your seller's disclosure law, and this is for any seller online, again, seller's disclosure law and lead disclosure law don't change based on whether it's wholesale or not.
Mm-hmm.
But your disclosure law says any disclosable or material facts actually is a legal term. Remember, material fact is a very vague definition by the state. It's not just now an inspection is a provable material fact. A licensed, trained inspector has said, there's something over here to look at.
Right.
A material fact is whatever the client, the complaining client, the angry client, thinks they should have been told that the other side knew that might possibly have affected their decision. So that's why disclosures have the unknown checkbox. We ask you about this, but you didn't know. And now I had this debate a few months ago, and thankfully a lawyer jumped in because this definitely gets outside my comfort zone. Somebody said, well, my buyer, after they bought the house, they discovered that something in the disclosure statement was wrong. And they feel the client lied. The seller lied. And I said, go to an attorney. But you have to prove the client knew and withheld. How do you prove something that is known? Has the sump pump ever run? No. Well, now you have to prove that they were down there at some point and saw the sump pump running. Or somehow you have to prove they had knowledge it ran. Everyone's going to know whether or not the sump pump's down there. but who knows what we're in. So having a disclosure, I believe, layman's terms, makes it very hard to be sued on a disclosure item because they have to prove you lied.
Right.
Now, God help the seller if they did lie. You know, does your septic pump work? Yes. And then they have a service call the day before for a broken septic pump, and there was never a repair. Okay, well, that may be a bad example, but the point is, God help the seller if there is proof that they lied. And as I mentioned, the lead disclosure law is 3, and we do have to wrap up because I think we have. Is it 2:00 with what's his name?
His screen popped out of here about 10 minutes ago. I don't know if he's still in here.
Steve. Yep.
Oh, I didn't realize you were sitting in the corner. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I was here and my finger hit something and it just logged me out. So I've just been sitting here. I've been here, but just backstage ever since it logged me back.
Could you hear it backstage or no?
Oh yeah, I could hear and see everything.
Right, yeah. All right. So basically, so you heard all that. We have 2:00 with what's his name, right? Or is that 2:30?
2:00 with the TV studio.
With the TV studio, okay, right, okay. Mm-hmm. So all right, so basically, that kind of covers. I kind of went too deep on the duel. We'll cover that more in detail later. But let me just take about 20 minutes or whatever and go through. I mean, anybody got any questions before I go through the other?
Nope.
All right, so now let me switch over to this screen, which is Flex, and you guys got to tell me because, as Ryan can tell, I don't have a dual monitor set up here, so I'm not watching what's going out. So I didn't notice Ryan was not in the room. But anyway, so what you do in here in Flex is you can do this however you want. You can do quick searches or whatever. You want to set yourself up with subscriptions. And Lenny, when you get in, we'll get you all, we'll show you how to set this up. And so when you start, you guys don't have any subscriptions. So you're going to set up, and I'm just going to draw a big circle. Okay, here's my circle. I want, and whenever I do, and we'll do another training, and this will give you a little bit on how I do comps, but we'll cover that separately. Okay, so I want to know every residential. Let's say I want to focus on residential for today, and you can do more than one. You can do all of them if you want. And now I want to scroll down a little bit. Oh, this already has. So sometimes it doesn't already have status checked off. Sometimes you have to go into add a field, search for status, click status, and then it will add status. It already had it, but fine. And you want to search for expired. So, and again, just to remind everyone what the definitions are. Active, that's listed. I don't have a buyer. Please bring your buyers, whatever. Some agents, and I am some agents, will leave it active after signature until 2 things happen. And this is what contingent is actually for, but a lot of people don't use it because some boards don't have it. So some people leave it active. I'll usually put in private remarks, contract in place, waiting for contingencies. So it's active, it's for sale, bring me your buyers. If there's a contract in place signed by parties, all parties, not just an offer, but done, then I either make it contingent or I put in the private remarks, property under contract, go show buyers if you feel like it, but we're waiting on contingencies. There's kind of an agreement. Coming soon. That is, well, like it sounds. For some reason, you're not listed yet. Maybe the pictures aren't ready. Maybe the client's not ready, but coming soon. I honestly, I'm kind of floundering because I've never had a need to use that. Pending. There's a signed agreement in place. Now, I will leave it active or contingent, and very often active, until 2 things happen. One is until we have a deposit in place, in hand, in the office, cashed, done in my account. 2 is sometimes until the inspections are completed or past inspections. 2 reasons for that. One is McCarriger Street. As soon as I got the contract signed, and I don't recall why I did this, but I marked it pending. Maybe I was just in there and I'm like, okay, we have a signed contract, click. And then I brought it back out. Now, I brought it back out to active again, and I marked, hey, buyer did not provide deposit. Because there's no contract legally until the deposit's in place. It's void. It's not void. It's voidable. And that's a distinct definition. Void is when the contract says, if this happens, deal is over. Void of bull is if this contract, buyer or seller may kill deal. So if they're under contract and the party hasn't sent in their deposit, it's not void. It can be voided. So be careful on that. But basically, that's what I'm getting back to the screen here. Basically, that's so pending is at whatever point both parties are signed, and whether you put it pending as soon as it signs or whether you wait till deposits in place. And if you're going to wait till inspections are done, like you definitely want to get the approval of the other side and say, listen, I'm going to hold off until inspections. That can be a text or an email, but that's a PDF that and send that to the GPGH Realty. Not that, I mean, the worst that the other agent's going to do is, hey, how come you haven't pended that? But the worst, not the worst, it's not great thing. If the property goes from pending back to active, everyone wants to know why. So if it does go from pending back to active, you put in the private remarks, was pending, went active because of this. And if that's a volleyball game and it happens a bunch of times, you might have that a bunch of times. One of the scariest things is was pending, went back active because failed inspections. Failed buyer money, failed buyer, whatever, nobody cares. Failed inspections, if you have that, I always advise put the inspection report back up in the listing. Contingent, they have in here twice. I'm not sure why. Probably because with all this blends so many databases with the different boards, but it's contingent. Closed. Money's changed hands. Keys are changed hands. We're done. We're paid. We're out the door. And then you have canceled. This would be seller said, no longer interested in selling. Don't want to use this listing agent anymore. Whatever. Contract canceled. Selling agent or other. Sorry, I always call it selling agent. Listing agent. So there's listing agent, there's selling agent. Just seller and buyer is the way I would do it. The seller has said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to deal with this agent anymore. I don't want to sell the property anymore. It's over. Officially, the agent has no hold. Withdrawn is it's pulled off the MLS with authorization of seller. We don't change squat. Well, we don't do that without authorization of seller. But withdrawn, the seller's agent still has a little string on it. It's not really free to other people to jump on. Canceled, you can jump on those all day long, but those someone took an active role to kill. Expired is the passive one. Expired is it just ended. The timeline, contract was for 60. It was for 6 months, 60 days, whatever, and here we are at day, 6 months and a day, and the system has taken it offline. So we're going to do a circle of expired. That's what we're going to search. And now under that circle, I mean, wow, 73,000 of them. All right, that's a little nuts, but fine. And you can look at this as a list, and you can look at this as a detail. Really, in doing this search, you're not looking at it. Really, what you're doing, and with that huge number, I should probably edit the search so it's something a lot less than that. You know what? Let me just make a tiny circle. But whatever your circle might be, I just think the database is having trouble with 73,000. So I'm just going to make is 1 mile. And I'm going to get rid of the big circle. So then you're going to go over to save. Save search, save quick search template, put this search on the web. Save search. So you've now saved yourself a search of expired, whatever that circle is, and I don't know why it's going so slow. So you save the search and you name it something like expired commercial Scranton, whatever. This is your name for it, whatever you name it as. God, this thing is slow. I don't know why. And then when you're in save, and I'll have to apparently, okay, good. So you name it, describe it. Is it are you changing an existing search, or are you creating a new search? Almost always I'm creating a new search. Contact, am I doing this for an existing contact, for a new contract, or contact meaning client, or no contact? And then you save, in my world, you save and add subscription. And what you do with that is you set up how often whoever you select gets that email. Now, in this case, you're selecting that you get that email because you're wanting to know what the expired listings are. Or if Ryan were so willing and wanted to, he could set up a search in the New York board to send expired listings to us. That's his board, his different brokerage, that's his choice, but he could do that. Same thing as I can do that, and I will do that if you guys want me to, in Bright, which gets you all of the expireds from Allentown-ish down to Virginia. And we can make whatever circle within that, whatever. But who should get the notification of new listings to? Boom, boom, boom. You pick that out. You add contacts, schedule. I usually do every day. Email, content, subject, whatever. You do the rest of this. And when you send this, and really this first send as an expired doesn't matter. It does, but it doesn't. Because I'm now getting every expired to potentially the last year, the beginning of time, whatever. I'm getting them way back. And how much time do I want to spend on expired that expired a month ago, a week ago? Questionable. But what I do with this is every morning it comes in, or nighttime, I forget when it comes in. I think it's around midnight. Boom, here's a list of expireds. First thing you do when you get that email is you look and see if that property, you search that address again. Don't just search the MLS number. Search the MLS number, yes, but search the address as well. Because what will happen a lot of times, and by mistake or by design, the agent, there'll be 2 or 3 of the same address in the MLS. For example, the agent might be a member of both Scranton and Luzerne County boards. And they did 2 separate listings because until recently, the databases were separate. So they did a Luzerne County listing and a Scranton listing to make sure their client got the best coverage. They renewed one of them. They signed a new listing contract or extended or whatever they did. And they renewed the Scranton listing, but they forgot to renew the Luzerne County listing. So you see, is it listed by anybody actively right now? Is it pending by anybody actively right now? Did this expired one just become an orphan somehow? Or bluntly, did another agent move faster and get that thing relisted faster than you got to? Fine. Somebody else won the race. The point is, it's relisted. We can't touch it. If it's with a wholesaler, there is no legal protections whatsoever for that. We can sweep in. We can see what Jake and Jordan have listed, and we can go and call them up and say, would you like, or have off-market listed. Jordan's now licensed, different story. But we can see what a wholesaler has posted, and we can contact that seller and say, I can get you more if you let me list it. There's no protection for a wholesaler right now. There is a protection if it's a licensee. If a licensee has an active on it, it's protected. And I don't honestly know if that's an NAR or a state ruling, but truthfully, if it's listed with a licensee, even if it's listed with a non-Association of Realtors member, I'm not touching it. I'm not having that fight. But if it's not listed, we skip trace that seller. And the way we skip trace that seller, and I'll just do this real quick. And again, we'll do more. And I'm going to use mine just because. Now, mine is a bad example to use because mine is a company name, and skipping companies is harder. But you're looking at, when you're looking at expired, you're looking at the owner. That's the only one you care about. So you're looking at Good People Good Homes. Oops. You're looking at company name, and you're looking at PIN number. Now, this is where I'm going to break my pattern, and I'm going to use Lackawanna County because Luzerne County. So Luzerne County, I need to ask someone whether their website allows you to search PIN numbers anymore without a paid search. In Luzerne County, I search Times Leader Property Assessment Database. I don't actually have it bookmarked because they have changed a couple times. Times Leader has a database that you can search very well. It has a very good search tool. Lackawanna County, I'm going to, I know we got to switch to TV in a second. Lackawanna County, I am going here. Search public record properties account. And this is what you're looking for in every county. And Lenny, you've probably done 100 of these too. And I know Ryan has. You go in here basic search is usually how I do it. Fine, disclaimer, I'm not going to sue you, leave me alone. And I'm putting in either the parcel number, which I should be able to pull off the listing, PIN number, parcel number, tax ID number, whatever they call it. I should be able to pull that off Flex. Or I'm searching owner name or the street, the address, and the city. So 313 Pittston, Scranton. And that gives me Barrett Ryan. Okay, great. And I am unfortunately out of time on this, but I will do 2 more minutes just on Forewarn. You all have Forewarn accounts. You're all members of the Scranton board.
We're not on your screen, by the way.
Oh, damn! It keeps opening new windows. That sucks. All right, I got it. I'm glad you told me that. So it pops up with here's your parcel ID and here's the name of the owner of that property.
Mm-hmm.
So then you go to Forewarn. I got to remember to always use show whole window. That's just going to be easier. And this is where, so in Forewarn, you log in, and it's going to give me that stupid thing of, it gives me this one for some reason. My computer's a jerk. And then it gives me this one, which I need to use my text message for. And Forewarn says 289-028. All right. And Ryan, just let them know that we will switch over to whatever account they do. We have a link for them yet, Ryan?
Yeah. Let me just get that ready.
Okay. So Mr. Barrett, and I did not notice what city. I did not notice his city and state before I let it go. But you'll enter his name, his city, and you'll hit search. Too many records found. Okay, now we take a step back and we look at Barrett. Record not found. Okay. And obviously I screwed up in not keeping the other window open. Boom. Barrett K. Ryan. Now we can do a criminal records check on the guy. We can do infractions, whatever. But here's his phone record. This is the last known phone number. Now the last seen date, honestly, forget it. Don't worry about it. I mean, use it, like it, but a lot of times it's wrong. But now I have this guy's phone number. So I've gone from seeing a property that's expired to having a phone number. Now I dial for dollars. Hey, Mr. And I can work with you letting on these scripts. I know you, but it's the same seller script basically, except, hey, I noticed you were listed and your property just expired. I'm a broker and I'm an agent and my broker is also a cash buyer. We'd love to talk to you about doing something with you on this property. Maybe relisting it for you, maybe finding you something else, whatever the spiel is appropriate. Mm-hmm. And you spent a little teeny bit of time looking at the listing and having some idea about it. You can comp it if you want, but like cold calling, we don't know if we're going to get a deal here.
Right.
But this gets you from the email of expired listings in the morning or whenever it comes out, usually overnight, to here's a phone number to call on the seller. Now, if there's a bunch of them, we do have a skip trace guy, whatever, we can do that. We can talk to you about that. But this is a great thing. And the last thing, and I do need to jump, but the last thing is for sale by owner. In the wholesale world, with so much competition on the buyers, FSBOs are typically out of this world for a wholesaler. But on a FSBO, first source of business opportunities, what those letters mean for a listing. Hey, sir, let me take over all the crap of dealing with these millions of people calling you, and let me see if I can get you more money because all the realtors are going to fight over selling your house. So FSBOs, where they're kind of off market, they could work. So FSBOs and expireds are great places to start.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, I have questions off topic, but can I give you a call later at some point?
Yeah.
I know you're hopping on it too.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, cool.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.